If I could call up Nelson Membrano to the podium over here. Well, can't get the answer to that. That's good. We just wanted to introduce our new building official, Nelson Membrano. He's come to us from the city of Capitola. We've had about 5 weeks, I think, 4 weeks. But it feels like he's been here a long time. He's really hit the ground running. We're feeling really fortunate to have brought somebody with great California coastal experience. He's brought a lot of plan check back in-house and starting to really develop relationships with the building community out there. So we just wanted to introduce him to the council, to the community, and welcome him to the city.
Hey, welcome. Thank you.
All right, next is ceremonial matters. Proclamation recognizing September 8th through 14th, 2019 as Suicide Prevention Week. And this will be read by Councilmember Ornelas.
Whereas suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States and the second leading cause of death among younger people than 44 years old. And whereas over 90% of people who die by suicide have a diagnosable and treatable mental health condition that is often not recognized or treated, the stigma associated with mental health conditions and suicidality works against suicide prevention by discouraging at-risk persons from seeking life-saving help and further traumatizes survivors of suicide loss. And whereas organizations such as the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention envision a world without suicide and are dedicated to saving lives and bringing hope to those affected by suicide through research, education, advocacy, and resources for those who have lost a loved one or who are struggling. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the City Council of the City of Arcata that September 8th through the 14th, 2019 is Suicide Prevention Week in Arcata, and all residents are encouraged to learn more and get involved by visiting afsp.org. That's dated today, September 4th, and signed by Mayor Brett Watson. And is Heather Freitas here?
Y'all hear me? All right. Thank you for adopting this proclamation. Actually, this Sunday, we're hosting our 5th annual Out of the Darkness Community Walk in Arcata, and everyone's invited, of course. It's on the Arcata Plaza, begins at 9 in the morning, registration opens and our program's at 10. It's an opportunity for people who have been directly impacted by suicide, loss, or struggling with mental health challenges to join us, or even those to come and support, to connect with community resources. We'll have tons of people there who are doing work in our community and throughout the county, including in Eastern Humboldt. So it's a really great opportunity to learn about what the community is doing around these issues. Thank you so much for adopting this.
Thank you.
Next is proclamation in recognition of Zero Waste Coastal Cleanup Day, September 21st, 2019, to be read by Councilmember Pereira.
Whereas the state of California has a varied coastline of sandy beaches, rocky shores, productive estuaries, marshes, tidal flats, urban areas, and harbors. And whereas the marine environment is one of the most valuable resources for recreation, tourism, fishing, and other coastal activities. Coastal protection is a responsibility shared by residents, the business community, and public institutions. And whereas the North Coast Environmental Center's Beach Beautification Program, now Adopt a Beach, began in Humboldt County over 40 years ago and is now celebrated throughout California and around the world. Last year, 700 Humboldt County volunteers picked up almost 7 tons of trash from our shoreline and coast. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata recognizes Saturday, September 21st, 2019 as Zero Waste Coastal Cleanup Day and encourages individuals, businesses, service groups, and public institutions to hit the beach to jointly promote a healthy and productive coastal environment. Signed today by Mayor Watson, and I'd like to invite up Casey.
On behalf of the North Coast Environmental Center, I'd like to thank the City of Arcata for recognizing our first Zero Waste Coastal Cleanup Day. This year, we're focusing on the educational side of beach cleaning. We're leading by example in hosting a completely zero waste event for the first time ever. By working together as a community, we can better understand our consumer habits and make an impact on our planet and start making the little changes necessary to a brighter and less trashy future. Mark your calendars for this year's Zero Waste Coastal Cleanup Day on September 21st.
Next is proclamation in recognition of Queer Community Awareness Month, September 2019, to be read by Councilmember Patino.
This proclamation from the City of Arcata is in recognition of Queer Community Awareness Month, September 2019. Whereas there are many communities being marginalized, isolated, or underrepresented, despite one of our nation's greatest strengths being our rich diversity of people and cultures. It's extremely important for people to support each other, and the queer community can serve as an example of this. Regardless of orientation, gender, or other differences, we share a similar experience. And whereas the City of Arcata celebrates the value, growing recognition, and contributions of the queer population, as well as recognizes that their challenges and struggles for full equality are akin to other marginalized groups. And whereas Redwood Pride invites everyone from Humboldt County, as well as the surrounding regions, to celebrate our diversity with the Redwood Pride Community Festival, parade, and evening celebration being held in the city of Eureka on Saturday, October 12th. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata recognizes September 2019 as Queer Community Awareness Month in the City of Arcata. This proclamation is dated today, September 4th, 2019, signed by our Mayor, Brett Watson, and Jordan Nicolai is here. Thank you.
First off, thank you for this. It's great to be appreciated and recognized by the community, because there's a lot of people out there in the community that actually really appreciate that. Put a lot of time and effort into making Redwood Pride what it has become this year, and part of our focus is on the community and community events and programs and other nonprofits that help contribute to the overall well-being of the community. And the day part of our event, which is, as mentioned, on October 12th, is at the Jefferson Center in Eureka, and it starts at 10-ish, depending on how everything goes. Last year we had some rain at the last minute, which kind of made everything a little hectic, but still worked out. And we're going to start there with the Day Festival, which is focusing on the other organizations and groups that are helping around the community. And then there's the parade and an evening celebration, so hoping to see anybody that can possibly make it there in any way, shape, size, or form, even if it's just giving somebody a ride. Sometimes that's an issue just for somebody to just get there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the annual report from the Public Safety Committee. Do we have a representative? Okay.
There we go.
I'm Letty Dyer. I am the Vice Chair for the Public Safety Committee. I stand giving the report for Melissa Lazone, who is absent tonight, and she is our Chair. The City of Arcata Public Safety Committee Annual Report to the Arcata City Council. Our committee members: Melissa Lazone, Chair; Letty A. Dyer, Vice Chair; Anjali Browning; Andrew Campbell; Fred Johansson, who is present, Adrian Kamada, Jesse L. Lopez. Our staff liaisons are Brian Ahern, Chief of Police, Andrea Schutt, who is our Police Services Assistant. The Public Safety Committee was established by the adoption of Ordinance Number 1505 that went into effect on Friday, June 15, 2018. The Public Safety Committee's primary focus is to provide a public forum for the City of Arcata, the Arcata Police Department, and community members to share their public safety concerns and identify potential solutions. Committee members research and evaluate crime trends and identify the highest risks to public safety. Committee members also make recommendations to the City Council, City Commissions, and City staff regarding threats to public safety, crime reduction, and prevention strategies based on their research and community outreach. The Public Safety Committee meets on the fourth Wednesday of each month at 6 p.m. in City Council chambers. The committee held 5 meetings during 2019. The committee reviewed and/or made priorities on the following items. A, policies, ordinances, management plans. The committee's first order of business per the Public Safety Task Force report, March 7, 2018, was or is to establish a Safe Arcata strategic plan, which will work with Arcata Police Department, city departments and committees and stakeholders to develop a strategic plan that would emphasize building community partnerships to identify and implement 1, citywide crime reduction and prevention measures, 2, a safe neighborhoods plan emphasizing neighborhood-specific crime prevention strategies, community outreach, and disaster preparedness, which will be developed in conjunction with ongoing neighborhood outreach events at Arcata Police Department and other city committees. 3, a safe corridors and open spaces plan emphasizing increased connectivity and specific safety features implemented along designated pathways, trails, streets, and in parks, implementing crime prevention through environmental design, SEPTED. Principles to evaluate needs such as lighting, security cameras, sight line clearance, and the like. B, public outreach. 1, safearcata.org. The committee is currently working on the design and relevant content to populate the safearcata.org website. 2, quick reference public safety guides. The committee is working with APD to determine the most effective way to distribute brochures and magnets developed by the Public Safety Task Force. 3, the committee has asked that APD officers with crime prevention training and Andrea Schutt to provide crime prevention tips and techniques to businesses and homeowners/residents with materials from our local Neighborhood Watch program. 4, the committee is developing a list of community stakeholders to join our regular meetings to start building understanding and partnerships. C, goals and activities 2019-2020. 1, the committee has requested the Arcata Police Department conduct a SEPTED evaluation of the HSU footbridge to determine the viability of a safe corridor starting at the HSU footbridge, continuing through Northtown and into the Arcata Plaza. This would involve implementing SEPTED principles along the route, as well as inviting businesses along G and H streets to create business watch groups. 2, the committee is currently researching the viability of creating community court, a problem-solving court that addresses quality of life or nuisance cases based on national and regional models. 3, the Arcata Police Department, at the request of the committee, is in the process of developing a protocol to more effectively respond to repeat offenders. This protocol will be distributed to neighborhood and business watch groups, as well as other organizing groups. And 4, the committee will continue to work with and support the efforts of the Plaza Improvement Task Force. In conclusion, I would like to thank the council for forming the committee and allowing us to have our monthly meetings. And I do have a committee member here, Fred Johansson. Thank you.
Thank you. questions or comments? Sophia?
No, just want to say thank you. I know this is the first annual report that we've received, and just really grateful for all the work that you're doing. I know you have a lot of work ahead of you, but it seems like you've made some great headway. So thank you.
Thanks.
Paul?
Yeah, I really like the idea of the community court, and I've never heard of it, and I hope to be educated by you on it. You're welcome.
Right, and one thing that's going to come up later in the meeting tonight that's relevant also is equity issues related to crime and public safety. And so I think we may be able to talk about that later during that agenda item later in the meeting. All right, thank you. All right. Next is early oral communications. This 15-minute time period is provided for people to address the council on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of all oral communications, the council may respond to statements. Any request that requires council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers addressing the council at this meeting will be limited to, could I have a show of how many people who want to speak tonight? I'll have it 3 minutes per person then. And all other oral and written communications will be heard at this meeting under agenda item 11. So anybody who would like to speak on an item that's not on the agenda, please come forward if they're not already. Please go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Carpani Burns, and I would first like to give gratitude for being allowed to remain on stolen Wiyot land. The second thing is my heartache about justice for Josiah, but I'm actually not here to talk about that tonight. I'm here to talk about my second heartache that just occurred. I am planning a long-distance backpack trip. I love Arcata Community Forest for some of my training, and I just love to be in there. I walked in there a few days ago, and one of my favorite trails to train on is trail number 12. I walked up trail number 12, and all along I was seeing these signs, beware of trucks. I got up to fairly high on 12, and there was a sawhorse, a very large one, blocking, saying timber project or something. Nowhere ever did I see a THP paper or anything saying what it was, what the timber harvest is going on, but it's massive. The trees I saw down, obliterating trails coming off of 12. The trees are mature, healthy, beautiful trees. And I cannot tell you how heartbreaking it was to have that experience, especially at a time when the climate crisis is so on us. How is it that we are cutting down trees, especially in our own community forest? And I know these trees are going for sale because I saw how they're cut. I don't know who's cutting them. One of the reasons I'm bringing it up here is because I saw City of Arcata trucks and labels on signs, the signs that were there. So I thought I'd start here and say, what are we doing? Why is this happening? It was heartbreaking. If they're being cut for fire prevention, it's all wrong. Because what's being left over so many other debris, there's so much trash in the forest that could be taken out for fire prevention. And that doesn't look like it's happening, plus the mess left behind from the harvest.
Could you wrap up your comments, please?
Yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
All right.
Good evening, Arcata City Council. I just wanted to let you know from the Historical Site Society of Arcata that we're supporting a bill, SB 451, and that is to encourage the state historic preservation credit. And so I'm hoping that you will all consider looking into that and putting that on your list. And it's going first to the Assembly, and then after that it'll go to the Senate. And the California Preservation Foundation has sent out an alert asking members through their organization to please contact their Assembly people. So I just wanted to give you that. Also, I wanted to let you know that there's a wooden window workshop that's happening at Jefferson School. Bill Hull is putting that on, and it's on Saturday, September 14th. It's most of the day, and there's childcare available. The other is that the Historical Site Society is going to have its annual collectible sale, which is on September 21st at the museum, and it's from 10 to 2. So thank you very much, and I hope you consider looking into SB 451. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Joanne McGary, and I was pleased to hear about the Zero Waste Coastal Cleanup on September 21st. I also want to remind the council and people here and there that September 21st is a very important day in our community, in our nation, and in the world. September 21st is the North Country Fair here, but it's solidarity is their theme, and I'm sure a proclamation will be coming later about that. But also it is International Day of Peace, and I was reminded on Sunday by a friend that this whole month leading up to our International Day of Peace on September 21st is a month of kindness. So I'm encouraging all of us to be reminded of that daily as we approach our Day of Peace. And finally, it's also the United Nations Climate Summit for Youth, and Greta Thunberg, among others, will be speaking at the United Nations on that Saturday. The day before, there's a global strike for the climate, and all people are asked to join in with the young people in a climate rally and protest to get our leadership to do something. And on that point, I wanted to again request that the city of Arcata declare a climate emergency. This week, Pope Francis once again announced his climate emergency proclamation. And so I say the Pope and Petaluma, San Francisco, Davis, Chico, they've all done this. Berkeley, it's Arcata's turn to step up and join in to recognize that we globally, regionally, municipally, are in a climate emergency and to declare such. And finally, I Googled some history, and found an interesting history of a Pledge of Allegiance. But I encourage everybody to Google the Pledge of Allegiance. But I have here a Pledge of Allegiance that I have read in the past to the council and others, and it's a pledge. I pledge allegiance to the earth of our beloved solar system, and to all of her creatures, for here they dwell, one planet, united in harmony with universal love and compassion for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael?
Yes.
I want to respond.
Go ahead.
As far as Carpani Burns, could we have Marc-Andre or Julie Neander, Michael McDowell, somebody contact her and explain what's going on?
Yeah, she did. She has left, it looks like.
Yeah, but I don't know if we have contact information.
We'll definitely contact. That is the city's annual timber operations that's happening, and we'll have staff reach out. Looks like Julie is connected with her already. We'll call it there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments from?
I do want to say, I think given the UN climate symposium with youth and the strike that's going to be happening, I think it would be timely for us, I think, to consider a climate emergency resolution to be in solidarity with those efforts. So Joanne, where are you? There you are. I look for your flag. I should know. I should just look right next to it. But yeah, I appreciate that you've consistently brought that up, and I think this would be a good time for us to deliver that and help send that message of solidarity.
All right. Next is the consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is required, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, council members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for separate discussion. A, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of August 21st, 2019. B, biweekly report on general warrants. C, number 1, adopt the successor memorandum of understanding between the City of Arcata and International Union of Operating Engineers, Local Number 3, for July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2021, and authorize the mayor to execute. 2, adopt resolution number 190-16, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata amending the class and pay resolution for the International Union of Operating Engineers Local Number 3, reflecting the 1% negotiated salary increase effective retroactively to the pay period that includes July 1st, 2019. D, number 1, adopt resolution number 190-17, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata amending the class and pay resolution, management, mid-management, confidential, and appointed employees to reflect revised new title contracts and special projects manager position. 2, reallocate the currently titled 0.75 full-time equivalents, FTE, property and special projects manager position to 1.0 FTE. E, adopt resolution number 190-15, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata amending the class and pay resolution Arcata Police Association to reflect the new police evidence and property technician 1/2 position. F, adopt resolution number 190-14, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata authorizing application for and receipt of Sustainable Agricultural Lands Conservation Program planning funds. G, approve the purchase of 2 2020 hybrid police Ford Interceptors for $43,932.50 each and award contract to Harper Ford for a total of $87,865.00, including taxes and fees, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. H, adopt resolution number 190-13, authorizing destruction of certain city records as permitted under section 34090 of the California Government Code and the Secretary of State's Local Government Records Program. Would any members of the City Council like to remove an item? Right, would any members of the public like to remove an item?
I'll make a motion to support the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Right. Right, there is no old business. New business, appoint 2 members to the Economic Development Committee for term expiring December 20th, 2021 and 2022, and 1 member to the Energy Committee for a term expiring September 30th, 2020.
If it's all right, I'll make a motion for all 3 of the vacancies. So I'll make a motion to appoint Matt Fazio and Serge Mahalo to the Economic Development Committee. Matt Fazio for the term ending September 30th, 2022, and Serge Mahalo to September 30th, 2021. And to also appoint to the Energy Committee for a term ending September 30th, 2020, Andrea Alstone.
Second that motion.
Would any member of the public like to comment on this item? Seeing none, I will close public comment. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. I just want to say thank you to all the interviewees, and if you didn't get assigned, please stay in touch. Didn't mean we didn't like you, just there was just a lot of great choices.
And it's great for us to have such excellent choices of people applying. Next is Equity Arcata overview presentation.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor and Council. I want to start this item tonight by just introducing a few people that are in the audience. And at first, I would like to invite Dr. Cheryl Johnson, who's the Executive Director of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, ODEI, at Humboldt State, to come and join me because she's going to be helping with the overall presentation tonight. Dr. Cheryl Johnson has been with Equity Arcata since the beginning. I also want to do a couple of the quick introductions. At the far end, Monica Rivera is our network manager, and you'll see her position as we go through. And then I think we have sort of the two positions. We have, I think Janae walked in. Yeah. And Christian Boyd and Janae Sykes. So Christian Boyd, this is really her first day on the job. She is our brand new racial equity intern here at the City of Arcata. And Janae Sykes, this is probably her second or third, well, maybe fourth week with Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and she is the counterpart, really, to the city's equity intern on campus. So we want to welcome both of them to the group. And you'll meet lots more people as we go through the presentation tonight. So Equity Arcata is a partnership. Many of you at the council are familiar with Equity of Arcata, but it has come a long way in the last year, and so we wanted to bring an update and share with you some of the accomplishments and sort of where we're going with some of the working groups. But it is a partnership. The predominant sort of institutions that have been holding Equity Arcata together are Humboldt State University and the City of Arcata, with really strong participation from the high school district, all of our K-12 schools through Humboldt County Office of Ed, and then the Arcata Chamber of Commerce, in addition to many individual businesses. And we are working to create a welcoming, safe, and racially equitable community, working to eliminate racial disparities for all people of color, housing, health, employment, and education. I've practiced this, so I'm supposed to be able to do it really, really quickly. But then, okay. So this is Malcolm Chinaiwa. You'll see he was last year's equity intern, and our Arcata, it's only about a minute and a half.
Hi, I'm Malcolm Chinaiwa. I'm the racial equity intern for the City of Arcata. So Equity Arcata is a partnership between HSU, the City of Arcata, and local businesses and nonprofits. The goals of Equity Arcata are to eliminate racial disparities for people of color, starting at HSU and the City of Arcata, in housing, health, education, and employment. My role as the racial equity intern is to be the first point of contact for the City of Arcata and everybody involved in Equity Arcata. When I studied at Humboldt State University, I studied ethnic studies, and I learned a lot about racial injustice and the ways that people organize and work to dispel those issues. And I thought it was a great opportunity to take the things that I learned and apply them to the community that I live in, and that's how I got really passionate about Equity Arcata. Racial injustice has been in the news a lot in the last several years, both on a national and a local level. So Equity Arcata is just situated right in those conversations. We actually kind of predate some of those issues, and it just creates impetus. It just creates catalyst for us to continue to do the work that we're doing. I want our community to know that racial injustice is an issue and that everybody has a part to play in changing that, and that if people want to get involved, I highly encourage them to do so. Equity Arcata creates a great chance for people to work in their communities and address really serious and important issues. I really want to encourage community members to check out our website, equityarcata.com. There's all kinds of information about the work that we're doing, different events that are related to racial equity in our community, and contact information for myself and for other people involved in Equity Arcata. Our people, our community, Arcata.
Okay. Back. Malcolm actually got a really fabulous job at Humboldt Area Foundation, which is why we lost him as our intern, but it's all for the best to keep him in our community. All right. So just quickly, our vision is that as a group came up with a vision statement that we envision an Arcata that believes that we are a better community because of our growing racial diversity. New residents and Humboldt State University students are successful and feel supported to become part of a community, whether it's just for a few years or whether it's for a lifetime. Quick history on Equity Arcata, really kind of born out of about 2016. The university and the city came together with several individual community members to talk about ideas around inclusive institutions and changes that we could start make at the city itself in our organizational structure as well as at the university, and then how we start to roll that out into the community. And over the course of about a year, year and a half, by sort of mid-2017, there were lots of stakeholder meetings on campus, off campus, the business community and the student community. Many of you were part of those forums and stakeholder meetings, and it culminated in a design structure for the network. And so I'm going to ask Dr. Johnson just to share sort of about that structure. We don't expect you to read this. It just gives a sort of visual overview of the network structure.
So often when you have these large collaboratives or cross-constituent partnerships, you have to organize it. You have to have an infrastructure, or it's just a mass of people. So this is what we call the collective impact infrastructure, and that entails the design team, which are the co-chairs on the equity working groups, and then the advisory committee, which is community leaders, HSU leaders, city leaders, who, if the working groups get sort of bogged down in the system, they help move things through, take those barriers away. So those 7 working groups came out of that slide previously from qualitative data collected from students. And then you have the backbone support, which is Janae and Christian and Monica Rivera. And so collective impact realizes it's a philosophy, a way of working that no single person or group can solve increasingly complex social problems on their own. Too many organizations are working in isolation from one another, so our working groups collaborate regularly in order to achieve social change.
So we would like to take you through, I think the best way to illustrate sort of what our Equity Arcata is all about is just to introduce you quickly to our working group. So if you are a working group slide reader, maybe just sort of make your way over, and we are going to start with Chief Don Peterson from HSU PD to talk about police and student safety.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity. So this is one of the working groups, and I co-chair the group with my great partner in the back of the room, Chief Ahern, and he's been a wonderful partner in this. The things that we do is we get together. It has a lot of different elements, and I want to keep my time really short. And one of the things I wanted to showcase is what's pictured here, and it's in response to feedback we got from students, student safety, how students feel safe on and off campus, is we leveraged funding, GI 2025 funding from the state of California to provide part-time student employment, and we brought part-time students in as student safety escorts, because we got feedback from students that they didn't necessarily, even if they felt unsafe, want a police officer to do the escorting around campus, that maybe having a student would be a bit more comfortable. And we were able to get some creative funding together and hire 18 students last semester. We're right back at it again this semester for a full academic year. It's been a big hit. It's obviously a big impact for the students that we are working with and collaborating with. And then the feedback we're getting from the student community as well is just seeing students walking around the res halls in these day-glow shirts and being able to interact with them as opposed to a police officer. It kind of softens things up, and it seems to really foster communication. And then lastly, the Chiefs Advisory Committee, that was born directly out of Equity Arcata work, and we kind of fits and starts. It took a little while, and thanks to Ms. Boyd, she really kind of helped out with this and gave me some great direction and said, hey, try this if you're not getting any luck. And sure enough, I did what she told me to do, and we were right on board. So we had about 10 meetings last year. Our next meeting is tomorrow at 3 o'clock on campus, and so far there's been a lot of interest, and we just get together, we talk about student safety, campus safety, both student safety on and off campus, campus safety, and however that might show up. Sometimes it's very formal, sometimes it's very organic, but always it's a good conversation. And Dr. Johnson's always talking to me about qualifying or quantifying data. I feel like there's a much more resilient structure on campus to communicate about concerning issues. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to figure out how to measure, and it's the work we're doing right now, and we'll get into that in the upcoming year. So thank you.
All right, next up, our next working group is our communications and marketing group, and Kati Galato from the City of Arcata.
Hi, everyone. I'm the chair for the Equity Communications Working Group, and our goal really is to create a pathway toward equity messaging in order to stop hate and to really create an inclusive environment for all here in Arcata. We're the newest working group in the structure, so we're essentially just getting started. We've been doing a lot of outreach and public tabling, specifically at HSU at the beginning of the semester, continuing on into next week, because we really want to reach as many students as possible to let them know who we are and let them know that there are members of the community there to support them. This coming week, we're going to be tabling at our Home Away from Home potluck, which you'll hear about more later. And next week at HSU, we'll be at the Community Belonging Fair. So we're very excited to spread the word about what we're doing that way. And we're very excited to be partnering with the McKinleyville Alliance for Racial Equity and the Equity Alliance of the North Coast. We're going to be tabling at the North Country Fair together in partnership. So we're looking forward to that very much. And we have press contacts established, so we're now conducting our own media outreach in addition to establishing social media to reach more of our community that way. So it's an ongoing process, but we're very excited to start spreading the word more about what we've been working on and what our working groups have been working on.
And next up is our housing equity. So Christian Boyd's just going to give us a quick overview on the housing equity group.
Hello. The chair for the Housing Working Group couldn't be here today. Her name is Alex. So I'm just going to read what they've been working on in hopes that you guys will be a little interested and know more about it. So housing equity ensures accessible and affordable housing choices safe from discrimination, crime, and environmental hazards. The recent accomplishments that the Housing Working Group have made, they created a housing deposit initiative currently working at HSU. So there will be a reusable deposit for housing that students can use, kind of like a scholarship, to help out with students who may not be able to pay for housing deposits. Also, they have an educational model for tenants and landlords in collaboration with HSU's housing department currently working at HSU. So there's like a training and kind of workshop for housing tenants and landlords so they can get to know one another and work collaboratively in housing. Yeah, that's about it.
All right, and then next up we have Chuck Powell, who has been leading our welcoming businesses. And I'll give him a chance on his slide, and then we'll open up your newsletters on here too.
Thank you. So, the Welcoming Businesses Committee, it was established as an outreach for local businesses to engage them in the understanding of what equity work looks like and how equity work can benefit them both as business members of the community and as members of the community at large, both as employers and as retailers to consumers. So through feedback from many businesses, right now we've worked on a newsletter and are continuing work on that. Our first newsletter went out this month. Actually, it was in August last month. The future newsletters are going to be discussing bias, both implicit and explicit bias, and how that can manifest itself in a business environment, again, both internally and externally in dealing with consumers, with the goal sometime of early next year, conducting a learning session for interested businesses so that there can be a coming together and sharing of different experiences and some learning that takes place around what bias looks like and how it can present itself in the community at large. And I want to thank the council for supporting this program. It's good stuff. Thank you.
All right, then next is our training and learning group, and we have Meredith Orm and Cheryl as well that will come up for that.
Good evening. Thanks for having us tonight. Ron White from the Humboldt Area Foundation, Cheryl and I are kind of the tri-chairs of this group, and our charge is really to support a common language across the region and common understandings related to racial equity work. And so we have offered sessions for the City of Arcata folks, as well as on campus in the TK-12 schools, and for business owners and employees in the general community. So in addition to some of that ongoing work in the community, we are doing ongoing sessions in our Equity Arcata working groups because we really want to walk the walk. And so at the start of every meeting, we're doing a 20 to 25-minute session related to our own ongoing equity work. So that could be better understanding of local Native history. It could be better understanding white patterns. It could be what are microaggressions. Why do we use the term Asian American instead of Oriental? Those are some examples. But to really model that.
We've had several what we call immersion retreats at the community center where we've invited the community, and there we've done probably over 100 community members. And just recently we had one, and NORCAN would now like us to do a cultural humility learning session with them. So we're looking forward to that. That's next month.
Great, thank you. We have 2 more working groups. So the next one up is our bias reporting tool. So Jennifer Eichstead is going to give a quick overview of what they're working on.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Eichstead. I want to note that I'm also here with my committee members, Celia Haro, Sharon Blank, James Clore, I'm not sure if any, and Christian Boyd are also here from this group. So this was a group that was developed out of work both with students and community members. We had an open forum talking about what one of the things that they needed and what they wanted. And what came very clear is that they would like a system of reporting when incidents of bias and harm happen, and also places where they feel, where folks of color and other marginalized groups feel welcome, to be transparent and visible. Because a lot of times if you report incidents that happen to you, it just sort of goes into a black hole and nobody knows about it, right? So in this case, our goal is to build, it was suggested actually by members of the Latinx Center on campus, or now called El Centro, to develop a application that will reside on people's smartphones, as well as a desktop version that allows people to report and map using a virtual mapping system where they experience both harm and where they feel very comfortable and welcomed in the community. So that as people move through the community, they're able to sort of make informed decisions about places and understand, like, where am I going to go and really be welcomed? Where do I feel safe? As well as where harm is happening. We just recently received a $14,500 grant from the Humboldt Area Foundation to develop this app, to work on developing the app. Our process is one where we will be working with the Welcoming Businesses group as well as the education group, and really dovetailing so that we can provide support if somebody says that they put on the app, and there will be a review process. If somebody puts on an app that something has happened, where we can reach out, if it happened in a business, and reach out to that business and say, we just want to let you know this has happened, how can we support you? And in helping address those issues and get them connected to the correct resources. So we're really excited about this. It's been a long process, and we're just really excited about moving forward.
All right, and then our last working group is our Home Away from Home, and Wesley Chesbro is going to give you an update and probably a plea for something for Sunday.
I've been doing a lot of that. Well, I'm here on behalf of my co-coordinators and the working group and the nearly 100 volunteers that have been putting on the Home Away from Home potlucks over the last 2 years. And basically, Home Away from Home is a chance to build a bridge between long-term and non-student community members and the student community, and to send the message to the students that they belong here and we love them and they're part of this community. And We do that by providing food. It's a potluck, and students aren't asked to bring food, community members are. We also have what we call a free stuff table, which has kind of a theme each potluck to provide students with goods that can help them make it through their school year. And then we also have solicited from businesses in Arcata raffle items, not a fundraising raffle, but a raffle where each student, when they come through the door, gets a ticket, and then we have a drawing, and we give out gift certificates and merchandise, which many generous businesses in Arcata have donated. And we've had a tremendous response from the business community, I might add. So we are entering our third year. We've had 8 potlucks for each school year, and the ninth potluck, which is the first one of the coming school year, is this Sunday at the D Street Community Center. We always get nervous because there's a balance between making sure we get the word out to students and we get a good turnout, making sure we have enough community members bringing food, and we have enough volunteers. It always has worked out beautifully. One potluck, we almost ran out of food, so we've gotten much more jumpy about really trying to get people to bring lots of food, because that's the last thing we want to have happen. But more important than the food is sitting down and getting to know each other. And so that's been an effort, because the natural thing that happens is when I walk through the door, I see my friend and I sit down and start talking to them, and the students come in groups with their friends. And so we've really had to make a conscious effort to make sure that there real conversations begin to take place and relationships develop. Just speaking personally, I now have a number of student friends that I see around town, and we stop and talk, and to me that is a very gratifying result, and I assume Paul and other council members who've been many times have had the same experience, where we're really creating an atmosphere where, in spite of the fact that, like every community, we have racism and bad things that happen, we also are developing relationships to create a secure and safer and more welcoming community. So along with all the other working groups, I think we're moving forward in a real positive way, and I appreciate the council's support for what we do, and the co-sponsorship by the city, the providing of the D Street Community Center, and all that goes along with that. So thank you very much.
So the reason we really wanted to highlight each of the working groups is that is the backbone of Equity of Arcata. What really has built is this extremely strong, mostly volunteer-run organization that is holding this work and advancing it, not as fast as any of us want to, per se, on any day, but we're seeing real progress over time. And I think that Wesley says it well. It's been very gratifying. So people often ask, how can I get involved? You certainly can volunteer at an Equity Arcata community event, attend many of our racial equity trainings that are offered throughout the community. This Sunday, you could prepare a dish or donate. We've got a table right here in the lobby that's accepting free stuff. The theme for this particular Home Away from Home potluck is, setting up your home. So things that would help students, set up their home, whether it's in a dorm or whether it's their first apartment or they're sharing a bedroom in a house. Monetary donations are, of course, always appreciated. We are starting to set up sort of the funding effort to create some sustainability around Equity Arcata. And if you're interested, just email us, and we can explore what might be the best fit for how you would get involved. So you can contact us at equityarcata@gmail.com. Give us a call, 822-5953. That's here in the city manager's office at the city. Check out our website, equityarcata.com. Or come to the Potluck Sunday and meet a lot of the volunteers and people that are behind this effort. So we wanted to give you a brief presentation. You guys did awesome tonight in keeping it short. We could have taken 2 hours. I've seen us do this in an hour. But we really wanted to leave time for questions or to dive deeper into any areas that you might have interest in.
I don't really have any questions. I have great experience going to all your events that I can possibly get to. The Home Away from Home potluck is a real rewarding thing to attend. I've been going to the equity roundtables for, I don't know, a year or two now. And just when I think I know everything, I go to another one and I find something out I don't know. So I really appreciate all the trainers and everybody that's doing the work, and thanks for putting up with me. A lot of times I don't get to clean up before I go.
Well, I just want to thank everybody. I suppose I have any questions. I am sort of wondering how the different groups are communicating with each other. if there's sort of meetings there. And it's been a while since I've been to the Home Away from Home, so thank you for, I kind of kept missing it. I didn't quite get the invite, but now I've heard about it, so yay. I just want to thank you, because I feel like it is moving along. I feel like something, I know I've heard some sort of difficulties around some of these conversations, or just moving these things forward, but it's seeming like things are kind of getting somewhere, but I do still have that question about how you guys are intercommunicating.
So I don't know if you remember the structure that I showed you. So that design team, they are the co-chairs of the equity working groups, and we meet every first Tuesday of the month and share what's going on in our working groups.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. I appreciate it. It seems like there's a lot of effort, and it's moving things forward and better understanding.
Again, thank you. I mean, so many of you have been here from the beginning, and just really appreciate you really seeing this through. I think this is just really incredible, and I appreciate you being able to share this with the community, the work that you've been doing, because I think so often it is that, you know, work behind the scenes that happens, and that there's really this long-term impact that we're starting to see from your work. I'm curious, you kind of touched on it a bit about, you know, fundraising and the financial sustainability of this network. So I would be curious to kind of hear a little bit more about, you know, it gets for maybe the community's benefit to understand, like, you know, if people were to donate and to give to this effort, how would those funds be used to help support the sustainability of the network?
Now it's coming back to me. So I mean, so the community understands and the council understands somewhat through our budget process. Right now, the effort really has been held financially by the university and by the city. So we jointly fund a part-time position in our network manager, and then Cheryl's office, and then out of the city manager's office, we each support a paid internship, in essence, or student assistant position for each of those. We could greatly benefit from a full-time network manager. So that is one piece that we need to develop some ongoing funding for. And then what we have found is, now that our working groups have really started to establish themselves, that they also have needs, you know, whether it's for just advertising needs, running flyers, creating brochures, or, you know, pieces of art for, you know, our websites, or whether it's, you know, giveaways that they want to, you know, or purchasing of curriculum. I mean, there is a number of pieces that have come up in each of the working groups that could better support that, and they're not huge dollar items, but some level of support staffing long-term, as well as, you know, some ongoing funding just to pick up the incidental costs that come. Humboldt County Office of Ed, I should say, has been really gracious in supporting us with the graphics and the flyers. They've helped create the logo itself and the branding that then, you know, they've given over to Equity Arcata. So that's how the partnership really has survived to date. We are in the initial stages of even talking about branching it out as its own 501c3 for some real long-term sustainability, because we recognize the importance of the city and the university being at that table, but we really recognize the importance of this work being done community-wide, and we recognize that we might continue to dominate as the two large organizations, you know, within the structure, unless we can figure out a way to create sustainability and pull back. So the advisory team is working on, you know, discussions around that this year, and I'll continue to keep the council updated on that as we move forward.
So I really thank all the volunteers who are involved in this. Some very active community involvement is critical, and so many people have stepped up and gotten involved, and that's excellent. And welcoming the students, especially students of color, coming to an unfamiliar area which traditionally has had such a small population of color.
All right, well, I just want to thank you guys all for coming out tonight. You're welcome to stay to hear the presentation on the Annie and Mary Trail, but you don't have to.
I'll just wait for everybody to file out.
sit here? Perfect. I guess we don't have
Okay, next is item C, receive an update on the Annie and Mary Connectivity Project. Recommendation is that we approve the recommended design alternative for improvements and authorize staff to seek funding for the project. Authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. Can I have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Vice Mayor, Council Member, and all the committee member. Thanks for coming out and supporting the project. Today, our goal here is to give you an update on our Annie and Mary project, try to get a recommendation on the alternatives that the team has selected, and authorize the staff to seek funding for the project to go to next phase, and authorize city manager to execute all the documents. So before we do a presentation, we want to maybe introduce our team here, and then I will go over the brief history of the project, how we got here, and then we'll do a presentation, and then you can ask us questions. So before I do introductions, I'll just go over the brief history. As you know, Annie and Mary Trail project has been on the books for a long time. It's regionally a very significant project, not only for the city of Arcata, but for the whole Humboldt County. It's a priority project for the city of Arcata and for the county. So with that in mind, in 2016-17, we applied for funding through Caltrans for initial planning phase of the project, and we were successful in getting that grant. So after getting the grant, we did an RFP process, and we selected a design team, a planning team, who could help us to walk through the process of selecting an alternative or going through the planning phase of the project. So we were able to have trail people and RCA and Caltrans on our team, and so far we have went through, in the last 1 year, multiple public meetings, public outreach, and we have done some initial design. So our project team will go over that design, and then you can ask us questions if you have any questions. So we have our project team here, Julie Neander, who's our key player on the project. Natalie is from RCA, Sophia from Trail People, Mike from SHN, Jared from SHN, and Suresh from Caltrans, who is overseeing the grant and helping us through the grant process and the project. So with that, I'll have Natalie do the presentation, and the whole team will get involved. Thank you.
Perfect. Can I take this away? Is it going to work over here? It is. Okay.
You roll that little dial there on top, forward or down.
Okay, I'm going to stand at the hot mic. It seems like it's been worked out, though. So thank you so much, council and staff and members of the public who are here tonight. So a little grounding information. We're here at the Arcata City Council meeting. It is September 4th. Oop, that is not the correct thing. Oh, gosh. Okay. Roll it. Oh, stamps? Okay, just a sec. Just a little friendly reminder, do you need stamps? Normal presentation. On the right hand. Great. So for tonight, we wanted to share with you the project objective, which Netra touched on, but I will elaborate a little more, the progress we've made so far, to share some information from the draft report. A full draft report is available here at City Hall and online on the project website. To receive input on potential preferred alternative alignments from you and from members of the public, and to clarify the next steps. I'm totally not doing it right. Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, so the project objective was to complete a connectivity plan for the Arcata Annie and Mary Trail, identifying options to enhance pedestrian safety, bicyclist safety, and other non-motorized modes of transportation, connecting some areas that aren't currently connected by a trail. So Valley West, HSU, downtown Arcata, and then future portions of the Annie and Mary Trail, and we'll look at a rendering in a few minutes of the vision for the Annie and Mary Trail. Most of you are probably a little bit familiar with it, but we'll touch on it anyway.
As Netra mentioned, here is our project team. So it consisted of the city, a consultant team, including Trail People, SHN, Redwood Community Action Agency, and then Caltrans is a key project partner. We had a project task force, which I'll touch on in a minute, and then many community members who participated in the public outreach process, and everyone here tonight. So this is our project schedule. We kicked off in August of 2018, and right off the bat, we held a public walk audit in the Valley West neighborhood. And that involved a actual community walk and observation of conditions, and then some feedback about that. So that was a great way to start the project. Continued with a really extensive assessment of the existing conditions, existing documents, planning information, so really not trying to reinvent the wheel, but pull from all of the planning documents that are out there. Developing some preliminary alternatives, which were developed with community input. So even those preliminary alternatives were developed with community input right at the beginning. Preparing a draft and presenting it, which is where we are right now. And then refining that alternative and finalizing the report. So it's not easy to see the street names here, so I'll give you a little information about the project area. It's outlined in red. This is the original project area, and we did expand it, but this is the part that's within city limits. And it goes from the south around Sunset Avenue, including the overpass and the skate park and Larson Park, along through a bunch of neighborhoods, and over to West End Road and along the business corridor there. It includes Erickson Drive and Erickson Way areas, and then portions of Giantoli overpass. The overpass definitely, but also portions of Giantoli Road near it. And then initially it ended at city limits, but we were able to expand the project area working collaboratively with the County of Humboldt and the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, because there was a recognized opportunity from the project team and city staff and quite a lot of players who were really interested in seeing the planning go forward and stretch the opportunities for planning as far as they could go, to include a destination of Park 1, the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District's Park 1, and access to the Mad River. So it wasn't much of a destination to end at city limits. It's a destination if you're going to West Green. But there wasn't much of a place for people to end up on this trail. And of course, from your perspective, you know, the project ends for you in some ways at city limits. But it was a really great collaborative opportunity to continue it to a destination that would be more of a recreational destination and an opportunity for getting outside and enjoying everything that Park 1 has to offer. Cool. So this is just a zoomed in version of that project extension. And there's a lot more information about the project extension in the report. This is just a high level overview. It continues along the railroad corridor to Park 1. And Sophia Zander from Trail People will elaborate quite a bit more on these maps, but this is just the area that we're talking about, so you know. Excuse me, I'm getting over one of those Humboldt things that's been like 2 months. So this is the vision for the Annie Mary Trail. The exact alignment may vary. So this is a vision that's been a long time in the works. And Friends of the Annie and Mary Rail Trail have been advocating for this for decades, and it's really cool. So what's exciting about it is, oh, thank you so much. Great. What's exciting is that portions of the Annie Mary Trail in Blue Lake are underway, and now we're doing this extensive planning for the Arcata Annie and Mary Trail, and it's really piece by piece that the vision's coming together. So I'll cover the community outreach and engagement opportunities and events that we held and what we heard from kind of a high-level perspective. There was a lot we heard, which is all in the project report, so if you want specific comments, that's a great place to go and see them. And then Sophia Zander will cover the maps and some of the more technical elements of the recommendations and get your feedback. So this was the Valley West Walkability Assessment, which, as I mentioned, it happened in August of 2018. You can't really tell from these photos, but about 25 to 30 people participated. Some folks were only able to stay for a portion of it, but were able to give their feedback either at the beginning of the walk or at the end or during the walk. So most walkability assessments start with a little orientation about what you're looking for and plans for the day. You go out on the walk and then you come back and provide your feedback and refine it a little bit. I'm going to drink some water. So That was a great opportunity to hear from folks, particularly in the Valley West neighborhood. And a lot of folks there really wanted to see improvements to walking over the Giantoli overpass and improvements to other parts of Giantoli that were a little bit outside of the project area, as well as improved access to Carlson Park. I always want to say Carlson. It's in Arcata. So that was some of the feedback we heard there, and really just folks saying they wanted more opportunities to connect from these parts of town to downtown Arcata, and to recreational opportunities as well. So we convened a project task force, which really helped to look at and provide feedback on the information that we were going to present to the public to help it be clear and as well structured as possible. And they were stakeholders identified by the City of Arcata to assist with the project, and they convened 3 times, so we're really appreciative of them. There's a couple of folks who are part of the project task force in the room, so I just wanted to recognize them. If you're part of the project task force meetings, will you raise your hand? Awesome, thanks so much. That's fresh, great. So this was a great opportunity for us to see, does this make sense? Is there additional information needed for these maps and documents to really help it be clear and succinct for people? So we also conducted a community survey before there were any additional public outreach events that was held between January and February of 2019. So there were 370 responses. And we also, city staff really mailed letters to and engaged directly with landowners along the entire proposed project area. And we also conducted bilingual outreach and surveys in Spanish as well with nearby schools, especially in Valley West, and parent groups. And I'll give you sort of a synopsis of what the feedback is that we heard after going through the events that we held. So the kickoff community workshop was held February 4th at the D Street Neighborhood Center. And there were about 40 people in attendance, and it was a really, really wet and cold and rainy evening, and a lot of people biked to the meeting, and there were some very brave souls there. But it was really well attended, and people were very receptive to the information and gave a lot of great feedback right off the bat about what feels unsafe about these areas and what they'd like to see be different. Then we held some really exciting pop-up events. One was at the Larson Park and Skate Park area, and city staff temporarily paved a section of the railroad so that people could see and feel what it would be like. So that was really cool, and it caught a lot of attention from people coming to walk onto there and envision what it could really be like if a trail was installed. Then we held, and that also included a pop-up bus shelter because there was some discussion about where a good option for an additional bus stop might be. And quite a lot of students who live in the neighborhood really expressed a lot of interest in having an additional stop there. So as you're looking at development in that area in the future, possibly an additional clinic or other housing or whatever happens in that portion of Arcata, people really were really interested in another bus stop. So that was cool to hear. So there was also a pop-up, or an event, a workshop held in Valley West at the, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name of the hotel. The Red Roof was not available. The Hampton Inn, thank you. The Hampton Inn also has a lovely conference room. The Red Roof is currently renovating, so that was the go-to, but it wasn't available. So at the Hampton Inn and Suites, there's a lovely conference room. We rented it out and held another workshop there. A lot of people who live near the project area came, and folks came to provide input. There were only about 20 people there, though, so we decided that we needed to do more outreach in that area. So we talked with city staff and came up with the idea of another pop-up at Erickson Way and Erickson Court, where they meet. And we did it in the middle of the day so that we could hear from people who work in that area and who are often like walking on their lunch break. Because we observed after being in the area that there were a lot of folks that did that. So this upper right photo shows our pop-up. Mayor Brett Watson came and was participating as well. Oh, I did it again. Great, so some of the results included really just a strong desire for a facility that was separated from motor vehicle traffic. So some of the options included on-roadway features, bike lanes that were improved, et cetera, that were adjacent to the existing roadway and not separated from it. And folks really overwhelmingly said they wanted a separated path. There was a lot of desire for connectivity for all modes to the Arcata Ridge Trail and to areas along the Mad River. And that included equestrian, bike, and pedestrian access. And when we say pedestrian access, we definitely include wheelchair access and access for all modes that are active, and that includes mobility devices and wheelchairs. So there were also concerns, overwhelming concerns about safety and personal safety traveling through the project area that we heard. People just wanting lighting and appropriate visibility on the trail. So depending on where it's located, some folks said, we just really want to make sure that you can see the trail from corridors where people travel regularly. Sunset and Giantoli were definitely safety concerns that we heard over and over again, that there aren't necessarily great facilities. And then there was interest, particularly from neighboring property owners and businesses, in fencing and other things to ensure privacy as well as safety. There was a lot of desire for connections to neighborhoods and schools, so you'll see that reflected in the maps. And to ensure that there were really safe trail crossings of roadways, so where trails intersect roadways, that there were safe means for people to get across. Lots of desire for pedestrian scale lighting, so not really tall overhead street lighting. Folks agreed that that would not be ideal, and they wanted to maintain some of those dark skies, but wanted to also ensure that there were safe lighting for pedestrians. And then ensuring that trail maintenance is a priority. Some folks said that they would like to see a mix of trail surfacing, particularly for equestrians or bicyclists with like fat tires. So if that's possible, to include that in the final design, folks would like to see it. And then there were a lot of very specific comments that were about particular intersections or locations throughout the project area. There was lots of enthusiasm at all of the events for the trail, and very few folks did not want to see it or were concerned about it happening at all. I think one or two folks were not wild about it, but also recognized that there were a lot of benefits. And significantly more people did say that they would like to see the trail be on the railroad corridor, and Sophia's going to touch on a few of the reasons why that was. But one of the main things was fewer crossings of driveways and roadways. And again, folks like the idea of a bus stop near that area around Larson Park. And so much excitement to connect to the Mad River. That kept coming up over and over again. So I'll pass it to Sophia to go over the project report with you.
Hi. Left button, got it. I'm Sophia Zander. I'm with Trail People. We are a design and planning firm that specializes in trails. We're really excited to be working on this, and I want to start out by saying that I was really impressed, first of all, with the RFP, that it directly addressed connectivity. A lot of times we'll see these trail projects and they end up being a trail that's sort of stranded out in the middle of nowhere, and it's really hard to get to and get from, which both limits the usability of it, but also endangers users, right? You're asking people to cross dangerous intersections to get to your facility. So I was really impressed with that from the beginning. That said, it's been a fun project to work on. We are pretty far along here in the beginning phase. We've talked a lot about the outreach. This project report is in the draft phase right now. So we've gone through, we took a look at some alternatives, we've put it all together in a report, what's going to happen. We'll talk about this at the end. But we will engineer one of the alternatives and then have a final report with all of the findings in one spot. So in this draft report, what we have right now is the background information that you're probably very familiar with, and then the three alternatives that were considered, and then other specific recommendations for the connections, for trail configuration, so the width and the materials, for how to make the driveway and roadway crossings, signage, and then amenities such as benches, lighting. There's a lot of opportunities for historical reuse of the rails. And then finally, funding opportunities is always a big one, because we've got to figure out how to get it built. There's also a significant number of appendices, and I don't want you to be overwhelmed with these. These are supporting materials. So some of these were the background materials that we prepared to get to this point, so looking at the existing policies and plans and railroad right-of-way maps, and some of them are specifically supporting materials, so all the photo renderings and all the detailed maps of the ramp options are all in the appendices. Didn't want to overwhelm the report. One of the big, the nice summaries in the report is this summary of the 3 alternatives, and I apologize, we kept having this font issue, and it came up again today. So if you can read through the fonts there, the 3 alternatives, this is a summary of some of the high-level pros and cons for each of them. And I'm going to really briefly cover them right now, and we can come back to any of them that you're interested in at the end. But the big ones, as Natalie mentioned, were the crossings, the roadway and the driveway crossings. You can see a really big difference in the number on the railroad corridor alternative in orange versus the other 2 alternatives in blue and purple. The other big difference is how many miles are on the road versus on the railroad corridor. The other one that we had a lot of discussion about was the public support. Really, this is a very subjective 2 and 3 thumbs up. The overwhelming support was for the railroad alternative. This is a map giving an overview of the 3 alternatives. So north is to our left here. We've turned it on its side just to fit everything in. You've got HSU over here on the right. What you can see is the spine is the railroad corridor. That's the existing alignment. And then the purple and blue are places where the trail could potentially be routed off of the railroad corridor. And the yellow is all the places that we looked at connecting to that corridor. So the yellow represents the Giantoli, the Sunset Avenue, the St. Louis overcrossing, all of those spots. The alternative 1 looked at what would happen if the trail was on the corridor through the entire length of the project area. It's pretty straightforward. And again, I'm going to go pretty quick now because there's a lot here, but there's many more detailed maps that we can pull up if you have questions. The second alternative we called the West End Road alternative. This looks at pulling the trail onto West End Road wherever possible or onto St. Louis Road. You'll note that in all 3 of these alternatives, the extension area from West End Road to Park 1 is on the corridor. And this first area from the skate park to the end of St. Louis Road is also on the railroad corridor. There were no viable alternatives in either of those locations. So that's the reasoning. So the alternatives really focus on that area in between. This third alternative was looking at sort of a hybrid of keeping it on the railroad corridor and trying other places to route the trail other than West End Road. So in the beginning, it's looking at pulling the trail off onto St. Louis Road right at the beginning, at the southern end of St. Louis Road, and then using that little spur to go, it kind of looks like it goes through a field off of West End Road, then you go under Highway 1 on the corridor. The other place where we looked at pulling the trail off was right, how do you describe that? There's a city property there, right? So right south of that city property. The reason we looked at that there was it's really, along that whole corridor, there's a wide space, and often I heard a lot from the feedback from people saying, well, why not just move the trail over? Because there's all these driveways and there's all this industrial use. So this alternative, we were like, all right, well, let's look at where can we potentially move that trail over. It turns out there's a lot of limitations in there that are not as apparent, and there was only one small area where we could. And then finally, we looked at pulling the trail over on Erickson Way. Again, based on feedback in the first workshop, we heard from several people who used Erickson Way as an alternative route when they were cycling from Arcata up to West End Road. So that's the third alternative. That was fast. Like I said, there are many, many more maps, and I was expecting this to come up. So the next stage is really going to be to look at those, to get feedback from you tonight on those 3 alternatives and get direction from city staff and from council on which alternative to move forward with, and then do some preliminary engineering on that alternative, which should be done. So SHN is going to do that, and that should be done by December. and be able to come back here in February with a final project report, and then go to Caltrans for their ATP, their Active Transportation Program, to apply in spring and summer of next year. Yeah. Yes, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, go ahead and cover that.
And this is just thank you. Again, in the report, in one of the appendices, there's a number of great renderings that give you some visuals on what the trail would look like in each of these settings. And again, some of the different options for the trail configuration.
I forgot something. I really wanted to touch on the equity element, especially having heard the last piece of your presentation this evening. And I wanted to highlight that in addition to having a survey available in Spanish, we had interpretation at every meeting. All flyers and outreach materials were available in English and Spanish. We worked to create Spanish PSAs, although it was difficult to place them anywhere. So that's one thing that I know is challenging in the community. There's not currently an active Spanish language only radio station. But we did work to place them on radio stations that were not exclusively English-speaking radio stations, and recognizing that in the Valley West community in particular, that you do have a good number of Spanish-speaking community members, and we did that, and not only expected people, to hopefully come to the meetings, but also worked with community organizers and leaders in Spanish-speaking communities in that area, in particular, to reach out to folks directly. So not expecting everyone to necessarily be able to come to these meetings, but finding ways to go to them. So I wanted to highlight that. And then also there was some interesting feedback in the community surveys about possibly naming portions of the trail in the future with equity in mind. So whatever that might look like for the city down the line, thinking about naming being an opportunity to increase equity and awareness.
I'm going to show just a couple more maps, and then we'll get into questions. So the next series of maps is really where we zoomed in and looked at sort of the detailed crossings and a lot of the conditions along the three alternatives. If I can get it to go forward. There we go. So this is just one of them, and we can look at all four, or we can just stop here, but this is the one from the skate park up to St. Louis Road. The big dots indicate the road crossings. So that's where the trail users are going to be asked to cross a thoroughfare, a road. The smaller dots are the driveway crossings. So that's where the users will have to cross mostly small residential driveways, but some of them are to the apartment complexes. And again, this one also adds in the yellow connections. So connecting to Larson Park, to Todd Court. There's a whole part of the report that looks at improvements on Sunset and Giantoli and St. Louis overcrossing. Do you want me to go through, Julie, do you want me to go through all four of them, or just?
I just thought it would be good to illustrate the difference between the rail corridor, which is the red, and the other two alternatives, the purple and the blue, just so you can see visually the road crossings and also the driveway crossings.
And I can move down. One of the places where you really see this is when you're moving down West End Road, and you see that the rail corridor does still have some crossings, but the volume, the number of them is just significantly lower. Even going to Erickson Court, you don't gain much.
Can we go back to
that?
that?
I think we can.
Yeah, right.
I believe we can.
So the rail corridor's the red.
Exactly.
And then the purple is what?
So the purple was our second alternative, the West End Road alternative.
Oh, okay.
So that's the one where the trail is routed onto West End Road for the majority of the route. And then the purple on the top side is the hybrid alternative, where it sort of moves
So
back.
the hybrid alternative is mostly the railroad, but it goes off on Erickson Way.
Exactly. It goes off on Erickson Way, and it goes off, I'm going to see, I got this. It goes off also right here, sort of in this industrial area where there's that big storage parking area. Again, that was the area where there was several people asked if the trail could be moved away from the industrial uses there, and so we looked at that. It actually, I'm assuming you want me to answer this, but it actually presented more problems when we moved the trail away. You end up routing the trail into essentially a parking or storage area. The trail user has to navigate a driveway closer to the road. You end up reducing the amount of parking and or storage, whatever the property owner wants to use that for, and you don't gain that much. So,
okay.
Yeah. Great. I think now is the time for questions, right?
Yeah, this was a quick presentation. I know it's hard to see. We have put some maps here if you want to see later on. We have maps on the wall. And, this time we want to maybe get some questions from you if you have any questions on any of the alternatives. Our goal is to, pick one alternative. The reason for that is we have this planning grant and we are supposed to do at least 30% design, and we didn't want to do a 30% design on all the three alternatives, so it'll be better to do on one and move forward. So that's the reason we are asking for to recommend one alternative and move forward with that, so we can do not the final design, but next level of design for the project.
What I'd like to do is get some initial comments from the council and then open it up to the public for comment.
Okay. I would just like to hear what the team's preferred alternative is.
So we've been discussing this quite a while, and I would say we, as a team and as a committee, I would say our preferred alternative would be alternative one, because it's on the railroad alignment. It has the least conflict. It'll be cheapest in some sense because there's an already gravel in place. So that's one of the reasons we want to recommend alternative one as a preferred alternative at this point.
Okay, thank you.
And then also we did the similar presentation at the Transportation and Safety Committee, and they also recommended alternative one as a preferred alternative. And also the project task force, they recommended alternative one as a recommended preferred alternative.
Could you go back to the slide that had the comparison of the three alternatives in terms of things like crossings and driveways and all that? There was one that had kind of a score with little icons. That's the one.
Yeah. Can you fix the text too?
So a question I have, so from this presentation, it did seem pretty clear that alternative one seems like the best choice. That's kind of where I'm landing. But I'm just curious, you've said that this would be potentially the cheapest option, has the least amount of conflicts, but are there any red flags or big barriers that are unique to doing the railroad corridor that would be different than the other ones that I guess still include the railroad corridor? So,
would you prefer that I answer this one?
Sure, if you want.
So I was present at all of the community outreach events and had one-on-one conversations with a lot of people about this alternative, and 2 or 3 people really highlighted that they might not feel safe on this trail if the conditions that are currently present persisted. So things like dense vegetation between the road and the railroad right-of-way that would preclude people from seeing or being seen on the trail, or a lack of lighting, or current uses like camping in the area. So if those conditions persisted, people said that they might not use the trail because they might not feel safe. And it was specifically people who identified as women who had those concerns, and people thinking of the folks they knew and like where they would or wouldn't use a trail because of those situations. So we were really cognizant of that in recording those comments, and that's where a lot of those comments around lighting, pedestrian scale lighting in particular, and trail maintenance and trail patrols or some form of regular kind of eyes and ears on the trail came up. And that's something that the Volunteer Trail Stewards program aims to do. And I know I was actually really interested in the idea of student safety patrols or possibly, community safety patrols, that kind of thing. So that was the only red flag that came up was that consideration.
Thank you. If it's all right, I have another question. So it sounds like in terms of the conversations about use of the trail, there was a conversation about mix of trail surface. Is it possible to have a mix of trail surfaces that also still address accessibility for those that need mobility assistance?
We're all volunteering to answer this one. Yes, in short, yes. A typical trail in this condition would be about a 10-foot wide paved asphalt trail, which would take care of all your ADA access issues. And then to allow other users that want a softer surface, what we've talked a lot about is having a 4-foot wide shoulder on one side. To construct the trail, you need to build the shoulders anyhow, so the shoulders will be there. There will be, regardless of what additional shoulders are there, there will be soft surfaces on the sides. Those surfaces tend to get grown in if they're not used. So what you see on the Humboldt Bay Trail was that the vegetation now comes right up to the pavement, right? But there was in the beginning, I imagine, about 2 feet of gravel or compacted stone or dirt. So the base trail, the most simplest trail will have a small amount of a softer surface that's usable by runners, equestrians, or other dirt bike users. We also talked about doing this, what we call a widened shoulder trail, where one side would be wider, where the width of the corridor allows. There are parts of the corridor, I want to be really clear, there's parts of the corridor where we won't be able to get very much beyond the 10-foot trail. So yes.
Yeah, it seems like if there are users that want that soft surface, enough users for the soft surface, they'll keep it soft or usable, let me put it that way. And if there aren't users, well then it won't be that way. I think the alternative one, for me, makes a lot of sense because of the fewer crossings. Just right away, fewer crossings. And it's simpler. When you look at the matrix up there, it just stands out as being the preferred alternative for me.
Another, just to branch off of that, another thing that came up in the community outreach was a lot of interest in making this sort of the first project that could really expand the Humboldt Bay Trail or continue off the Humboldt Bay Trail along the railroad corridor, given that there are new sort of opportunities to do that with the Great Redwood Trail and changes within the railroad sort of long-term railroad vision. So that presents a really cool opportunity for Arcata to move forward with this that didn't really exist before. So a number of folks commented on that and really felt that that was an important moment to take this opportunity.
Was there any feedback from the long-term Annie Mary Trail people, the Blue Lake contingent that, besides I'm sure they're happy that something's happening?
Well, Mike Fogut, who's here in the room, I don't want to put him on the spot, but he's been part of Friends of the Annie and Mary for a very long time, and he and other Friends of the Annie and Mary advocates have not only been able to be involved in this project, but we're part of the project task force, so certainly we heard from them, and there was a lot of interest in moving this forward. Mike, did you want to add anything? They were thrilled.
Well, thanks. I know it's been a long, long time. And I can't see anything but positive for. Go ahead.
Before Mike gets it, I just want to maybe add one more thing. As we mentioned, we extended the project from city limit to the park, and then the grant did not fund that portion of the project. To fund that portion of the project, HCOG helped, Friends of the Annie and Mary, they funded financially to fund that portion of the planning work.
Oh. So they put it right out there. Thank you.
Yeah, all those fundraisers over the years are finally all in our newsletters, like, hey, it's actually going to good use after 20 plus years. But I just want to comment on the trail makeup that in Arcata or in Blue Lake, we've already started with the plans. They just got approved by the DSA. So we're getting ready to get those documents out and start construction next spring. But in terms of the multi-user, it has that same concept of a paved trail and a 4-foot shoulder. So it's kind of contiguous in terms of what we'll be doing in Blue Lake.
Great, thank you.
Well, I think that it's clear to me from this diagram especially that there's a lot going with the rail corridor, with not having all the interactions with driveways and private and industrial, and also just the cost of not having to acquire additional property. And I mean, when I'm using a trail, what I like to do is to get on it and kind of go for a long distance. And so I think that the rail right-of-way certainly would do that. And safety issues are concerned. It looks like that there are a number of safety issues that have to be addressed so for a number of people to feel that it's safe and comfortable for them to use. One thing I'm not sure was covered very much is identified access points of where the people who are working on this would expect people to access the trail, both coming on there and parking or parking horse trailers if they're equestrians and things like that, because you're not going to have 50 access points. Most likely you're going to have some smaller number.
I'm going to try to flip forward. Here we go. Am I on here? Yeah. So our access points that we identified are basically, if you look at where the yellow lines intersect with the red or purple lines, starting at the skate park, we have access at the skate park, at Larson, at Todd Court, at St. Louis Road, and then not for a while. And then again at the Arcata Ridge Trail, which is also identified as a potential staging area. We haven't looked at that yet in detail, but I don't believe that there will be room for trailer parking unless we have it parallel. Did you want to address that?
We do have horse trailer parking there now, and we would aim to keep that.
Okay.
You also might have people who put bicycles on a car and then park the car and then ride on the trail after that, especially as the trail gets extended towards Blue Lake and becomes a longer distance trail.
Definitely. And then as we get to the Alder Grove area, one of the really key access points is here on Giantoli, and we spent a lot of time looking at this connection from Giantoli down to the corridor, and then also the connection over to Erickson and the connection at Frank Martin. And then as everyone has mentioned, the original scope of the project was ending where it says R11 there, and there is access there, but there's no space for a parking or any sort of staging area, which is really part of why it's so lovely that this trail is going to extend to the Park 1, and there will be access at that point. And that's another area that we're going to look at in detail and make that connection work.
There's also, the city owns some property right at Frank Martin Court as well, where there's a potential additional parking area there.
Right there.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you've looked into signage yet as something that you're working on.
So signage is something we always recommend as part of our trails, and we like to say that your signage is the biggest bang for your buck. Put in some really good signs in a terrible trail and you will get users. So yes, absolutely, we've looked into signage and we have some recommendations, and we will continue to make more detailed recommendations. The key though, and I want to recognize this, the key is that you want signage. It's not only clear and very usable, but also has to be manageable for the agency managing it. So in this case, the city. So we've been already talking with Julie and Anitra about what signage will work in Arcata and make sure it's compatible with the signs that you have, and we're not going to give you something that you guys can't manage or maintain, and we'll work with your systems. Yeah.
So
just to add on to that, there were also recommendations in the report about interpretation. So in addition to signage, interpretation opportunities to explain some of the historical railroad information, cultural resources, et cetera. And there's also a robust cultural resources document in the plan that outlines some more of those opportunities. So that's all documented and has been thought about, but it wasn't part of our kind of quick and to the point presentation here, but it's definitely been considered as well.
So any more comments before we open it to the public?
question for Natalie. I'm just wondering, where did people identify that they thought it could be like a little scary because people couldn't see in well enough? Where was that along the way? Was it in the city of Arcata? Was it in the county? Maybe both?
It was in the city part. I think most folks felt that they would be using the portion going to Park 1 during the day and on weekends, that people felt they'd be using it for its recreation potential, although some folks who live in that section said they would use it at many hours. But as far as areas, it was portions where the railroad is set away a little bit from the road, and so that, and where it goes under bridges and other kind of edifices. Let me see. No one was specific like this section right here, but where it kind of goes away from the highway there, perhaps at the top left, and then sort of in that the section in the more industrial area, people just felt that it wasn't as heavily traveled at all hours, and that's really, there are a lot of folks there during the day, and then there's very few folks there in the evening. So someone who lives along West End Road said that at those hours they wouldn't feel comfortable using the trail unless there were a lot of changes made to enhance safety.
Okay, thanks.
Have there been any discussions with the Arcata police about the safety issues?
There was a police officer, chief, at our first meeting, the D Street Neighborhood Center meeting, and certainly was there to listen and participate in the discussion, but there aren't other documented comments from the police department yet.
So I would encourage you to do so.
Yes, sounds great.
But lighting would be included, and there would be some maintenance of vegetation and things along those lines. So a lot of that would be addressed through the
And even, I mean, that's usually a later phase than the 30% designs, but that would certainly even, be documented a little more in depth in those locations. If you choose to go with option 1, the railroad corridor option, I think, that will be paired with information that, folks had this concern.
Okay. If there are not any further comments, then I will open it to the public. So if any member of the public who would like to comment on this item, please come forward.
Thank you, Natra. Dina McCullough with McCullough Construction. So if you can take us back. Yes. So I'm just listening to, I've been able to have the ability to input written comments, and I haven't been able to attend because we were out of town working on various projects. But as the company who built a couple of the trails here for Arcata, I'm very in favor of a trail system, and I applaud all the work that you've done and a lot of thoughtfulness. But I would ask for you to consider the pathway behind McCullough Construction and the current flakeboard area as an area of safety. There's some severe drainage issues there as well. My suggestion was to use the existing pathway there at Aldergrove Road, and I don't see it on any of these alternatives, but you would use the existing Aldergrove walkway that adjoins to a bus stop right now, and then travel in front of the flakeboard area. It's very small in that area. Again, drainage issues, safety issues, equipment very dark. We have a lot of vandalism. Last Friday we had someone in our yard for 3 hours trying to steal various pickups, and unfortunately he couldn't get them started, just like us, and so he wasn't able to steal those. But we have a variety of safety issues and concerns that the police officers do try to help, but it's just an endless situation. Very active cannabis growing operations on the other side of us, illegal, but there's just some concerns in that area right there from Arcata Forest Products through the flakeboard area, and I was curious if you guys had done that walk through there. I know you can I can't walk through there myself, but it's hard to visualize that because you can't see through there. And we've had, in the wintertime, we often have from the Arcata Forest Products, Fegus's property, we have probably about 3 to 4 inches of standing water at that point in the winter. So I'd ask that you maybe consider using that existing walkway and around, not behind McCullough or behind the flake board, as I don't see that is a very pleasing area of the trail. So that would be, if you could consider that in your designs. I know it's kind of late, but just for the council to consider that, I'd appreciate it.
Hello. I'm Michael Pruill with the Humboldt, representing the Humboldt Trails Council. I was also a member of the project task force. My first comment or observation would be that I was very impressed with the way the project task force, the way the team gathered public input and utilized the knowledge of the project task force. So I thought it was very well organized and well thought through process for gathering information and making some of the best decisions. The main thing I wanted to comment on is the choice of the rail corridor. We at the Humboldt Trails Council strongly favor the railway corridor option for 2 reasons. The first reason, the issue of safety, the number of intersections between trail users and the and vehicle traffic has already been commented on several times. So I would just underscore that again. Second, there's a very important issue called rail banking, which has a lot of federal overtones to it. And the main issue there is a right-of-way that the railroad acquired many years ago, and the trail would use that right-of-way. The more you deviate from the rail right-of-way and use alternate routes, the less intact that rail banking right-of-way will remain. And we're not only concerned about this project, but the Great Redwood Trail, because we've got 300 miles approximately of rail that we want to get rail banked and preserve those rights-of-way so that there won't be alternate uses of the rail line being proposed by people who own the property surrounding that. So the rail banking issue is quite important from a legal standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any other member of the public like to comment on this item? All right. I will close public comment and take it back to the council.
Well, I'd like to hear from the team, just along with Colleen McCullough's comments, like, what did you see there, or what are your thoughts?
Well, as I said, we are right now in the planning phase of the project, and we are doing survey work right now. And once we move along for the final design of the work and the permitting process, we will evaluate that. But for now, there is a place for trail, but we will address the drainage, lighting, and safety issue as we progress in the final steps of the design.
I do love the idea of just the straightforward trail. Absolutely. And not having like, oh, take a 90-degree turn here, which no one wants to do on a bicycle. And so, that's what is really attractive about that. Anyway, I just wanted to say possibly more people will help you with not having less vandalism. And that's a potential.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a motion.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the alternative 1 as the recommended design alternative, and authorize the staff to seek funding for the project, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents.
I'll second.
So I have a question before we vote. I'm just wondering, when we're ready to move forward, will we see it again? So we'll see the final?
Yes, definitely.
Application. Okay. Thanks.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, team.
Thank everybody on this.
And just to clarify for the council too, that as that project comes back to you, there will be CEQA alternatives that will continue to be analyzed, and so those will be before you as well.
Right. Next is oral and written communications. This time is provided for people to address the council or submit written communications on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of all oral and written communications, the council may respond to statements. Any request that requires council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers addressing the council will be limited to 3 minutes. So if anyone would like to comment on an item that is not on the agenda, please come forward at this time. All right, seeing no one, I will close public comment.
Just a couple of quick updates. We have a busy weekend ahead, starting with the HSU block party on Friday night from, I think we're 4 to 8 at this point. They are expanding the event a little bit, and I think there's going to be some fun activities. I hear, including a zip line on the plaza Friday night. Don't say we haven't tried everything. Yeah. That's going to be followed on Friday night by flicks in the park, at the ballpark. So I encourage everybody to get out and see those. And then we talked about earlier the home away from home potluck from 5 to 7 at the D Street neighborhood on Sunday. I also just wanted to give the council a little bit of an update on where we are with all of the housing sort of strategic planning that we're doing. And just to let you know, we really have started engaging in the public engagement piece of, this infill plan, the housing strategic plan, and our housing element, and kind of garnering a lot of public input for all of those. So we have been tabling both at Friday Night Market in Eureka, trying to get information from people that may want to live in Arcata but don't live in Arcata, or ideas about housing in Arcata that aren't right from within this community. Also tabling at our own farmers market on Saturday morning, and they have a lot of other pop-up activities that will be around town. We're happy to get you kind of a full listing of those, but they have been out and about and tabling. Do feel free to stop by and visit with staff if you see them around. I mean, they'll be up on campus. They're going to be at HSU. And then we do have a survey that's available on our website right now and throughout the community. So this is the time we really want to gather information about what would encourage people, or what would those that all say, I'd love to live in Arcata, what would they love to live in? What would our housing element need to look like to be able to support that kind of future growth? So it's a good time to get engaged in housing here in Arcata. That's it.
I'm going to be brief. I went to, briefness, huh? Valley West cleanup with Sophia, and lots of other stuff that I can't remember. Sister City, I-Block Party, Black students at Redwood Park had a great brotherhood meeting with community fish fry with local people and students, and it was real uplifting to see everybody be there. That's enough.
I'll be brief too. I just want to thank the Sister City organizers. I had volunteered at that event, and it's been going for 33 years. And I wanted to point out that Chief Ahern played the MC. That was kind of fun.
Went to some of the events that were already mentioned, attended an Arcata House Partnership Board meeting, and the city manager and I are in communication with them about some proposals that they'll be bringing to the council, both some policy changes and some budgetary requests for us to consider down the road. And then I will be attending the first meeting of the Council of Advisors on Homelessness. I never get the name right, but attending the first meeting that will be in Modesto.
Advising the governor, thank you.
Yes.
I went to the Labor Federation picnic on Labor Day. It's always inspiring to go to that. And also I went to the first session of the, put on by RCEA on the update of the Comprehensive Action Plan for Energy. And there will be meetings throughout the county later in the month, and specifically one on biomass and forests and energy. We don't have a definite time for that yet, but you can keep checking the RCA website to see when that is going to be happening. Dates of future meeting, we don't have any listed. No closed session report, and we are adjourned.